Starting. And we're live! Hey, everybody. So this is an interesting night. I'm so excited to be here. I admit, excitement is my middle name, sort of. I'm at Doc Foreman, and if you've just wandered in, you're at hashtag SPSM. What is SPSM? It's the Suicide Prevention Social Media Chat, typically Sunday nights, 9 p.m. This is season 5. We just started last week, and we have a wonderful show today where I was already learning things I didn't know just in the warm-up, which was pretty exciting. But before we get into that, want to just have like a moment of solemnity. I know, which is totally not normal for us, in solidarity. So as many of you know, about a year ago, Baton Rouge went through a catastrophic flooding event, and that was right as we had started the 4th SPSM season. And thankfully, my family and I were safe and dry. Our home was fine. We lost 165,000 homes to flood. We had well over 10,000 people in shelter. And we're still feeling the effects of that catastrophic flood today. Schools were out for a month. You know, 911 was not functioning. Hospitals weren't working. Pharmacies were underwater. So were the pharmacists. So just getting people life-saving medication was hard. Finding shelter for animals was hard. It was a life-changing experience for me. And I am so sad today to let you know that we have a couple members of our community going through just exactly that in Houston. So as many of you know, Hurricane Harvey has hit, and so there's not just the damage from the winds, but from rain that is stalled out. And so Houston's already received, I think, a couple of feet of rain, and they expect to get a couple more over the next few days. And so I'm very, very sad to report to you all that two people that we love in this community a lot, Jennifer Battle, who runs the crisis line in Houston, and Carl Dunn, who is one of the moderators of the Borderline Personality Disorder Chat, BPD Chat, which is every Sunday, I believe, as at 3 or 4 p.m. Central. I know I always sort of get the time wrong. But Carl shows up to everything about mental health and suicide prevention and social media. He shows up and volunteers whether he's at your event or not. He gives out his personal contact information to family members to support them if they're trying to help someone recover from borderline personality disorder. He is an endlessly available, patient, humble, and self-sacrificing human being. And Jennifer Battle, at Battle for Justice on Twitter, is a force of nature who finds ways on a large scale to do good for others, especially those in the Houston area. And these great members of our community already have houses that are underwater from several feet, and more is on its way. It's not good. We don't know for sure what our response is going to be as an SPSM community. What I can tell you, as someone who worked in shelters for weeks following the storms last year, we just had 3 feet of rain in one day. That's how it happens. That anything that you can do is appreciated. It is just as catastrophic as you can imagine. If you can volunteer with your local Red Cross, they do an amazing job helping. And I know because I volunteered with Red Cross and made sure to assist with veterans who've been affected. Please consider that right now, and we will be getting with you in the days ahead to see what we can do for these members of our community. A solemn piece right there. But as we're going to talk with our wonderful guest, I can't wait to introduce you to, Mr. Chris Maxwell advised me to be a little bit to not immediately pop up a GoFundMe, but to put a little bit of attention into the design that we were doing so that it was not bad, in the service of supporting members of our community who I know are going to be going through it. That being said, we're going to have a fantastic show. And if you can, please tweet out to Carl Dunn, and please tweet out to Jennifer Battle. If you have their Facebook or their text message, let them know that you care. That matters a lot. That being said, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Bart Andrews. Dr. Bart Andrews, say hi to the people.
Hello, everybody. An excellent job, April, with the kind words for Ooh, I have bad echo. You guys getting that?
No, it sounds good on my end.
Excellent. So thank you, April, for the kind words about the folks in Houston. I know a lot of folks were worried about Carl. Reading Jen Battle's Facebook's posts were heartbreaking, and to see what's going on and just watching the feed on Twitter, it's been really overwhelming. So the Red Cross is a great agency. I've got their website on my banner below. They're one of the agencies that's actively involved in helping the flood victims. So if you're looking for a quick place to donate to feel like you're doing something, Red Cross is great. I think that this ties in well with the show, because how we get our messages out and the design of our messages, these things go hand in hand. It's really important that we're thoughtful about all the things that we do. And I'm really excited about our guest tonight. Her blogs on Mighty have been incredible, and I've shared them many times, both at BHR and on Twitter, because they're insightful, they're heartfelt, and really has shown strength and vulnerability. And some of her posts, a post about her experiences with emergency departments. I get to work with hospitals all the time, and sometimes they get mad at me, but I have shared Alyse's posts with hospital staff so they can see what the people coming into the ED are experiencing, and sometimes that's hard for them, but you know what? This is the voice of lived experience, and it's powerful, and thank you, Alyse, for all you do. So I think we got a great show, and I'm excited to be here.
Dr. Bart Andrews, everybody, hooray, woo! And we've lots of special effect things. I feel like there are times when applause is needed. Everyone, I want to introduce you to someone who has changed my life. I want to introduce you, of course, to Mr. Chris Maxwell, who does wonderful design and social media. Chris Maxwell, say hi to the people.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Maxwell. I work for the largest national suicide prevention hotline in the country. I'm also co-chair for the Strategic Media Task Force for the AAS, the American Association of Suicidology. And in lieu of Tony being here, I feel like I need to drop the suicidology.org. Go become a member. And also ourdatahelps.org. You can donate your social media data to help fight suicide. As someone, like April mentioned, as someone who dabbles and pretends to know a little bit about design, I'm super excited about tonight, just in terms of the fact that so many of our organizations and so many of our efforts are truly life-saving, and so we need to make sure that we're paying appropriate attention to how we get out our messages and how we provide people with effective care. So
Excellently put, Chris. With that being said,
yeah.
Chris is the one who really pitched this idea, and he was 100% correct about this. We talk a lot about all sorts of aspects of social media, but in the end, it's media, and social media is visual, and it's audio, and it is really designed. So as much attention as you put into how to read typos in graduate school or on that white paper you're writing, you should be probably putting into design for the things that are really important to you. That being said, Alyse, you're going to help us with your name. And the good news is every guest helps you with their names, but you're really going to help us. And you're also, would you, after you introduce yourself, since we're a few minutes into the hour than I had planned a few days ago, would you tell us a little bit about your backstory and about your project on Kickstarter?
Yeah, so my name is Alyse Ruriani. I am a recent graduate of the Maryland Institute College of Art, where I got my BFA in graphic design. I have been doing mental health advocacy work since senior year of high school. That was when I came out with my lived experience and started not hiding that I had these issues going on, and then went to college at MICA and started doing more design and started writing, and then got involved with some mental health nonprofits, interning at Active Minds and the National Council for Behavioral Health, and was able to do some design for them along with communications work. And that's when I kind of fell in love with kind of combining my two passions of mental health advocacy and design. And now I am actually, my orientation is tomorrow for graduate school at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago for art therapy and counseling. So very into art, design, and how that interacts with the mental health world.
We are so excited to have you. And one of the reasons is like when we find some of these great hybrid experts, and you are one of them, so that you understand you're actually a hybrid of multiple things. So lived expertise, you have some clinical background and advocacy and policy background, and then you also understand design. So I would love for you to, if you could, just start and tell us a little bit about this project that you're doing, this book, and which people can read about it on the Mighty and they can go see on the Kickstarter, but I would love for you to talk about your project before we get into the advice.
Yeah. So I have always loved workbooks, I think because they're like a tangible thing. So like even when I was in therapy, I always would like go home and I was like, all right, well, like I feel like I need to feel like I'm working on my issues, not just in therapy. And so I was always like in Barnes and Noble, like sitting in the self-help section, going through the workbooks. And I found myself drawn to the ones that were prettier, you know, they weren't just like this super clinical heavy workbook that isn't really engaging. But I also felt like I couldn't really find one that like I stuck with. So that idea kind of stuck with me. And then for my senior year, we had to do a thesis project. And so my thesis degree project, I decided I was gonna make the book that I wanted when I was younger.
And you're not talking like how I would make a book, where I would like type it up and there would be some brads and I would put some stickers on it. Like you're talking about like an actual book.
Yeah, so I decided to do a Kickstarter so that I could do a small print run and make a creative workbook, but not just one that's kind of like, you know, oh, journal about this and, you know, doesn't really have a clinical backing. It's just kind of, you know, for self-expression. I wanted one that was creative and engaging, but also had that clinical information that, you know, is kind of infused into the prompt so that you're doing things that are related to maybe the therapy you're in or therapy you want to try. And so I use dialectical behavior therapy in a lot of my prompts because that is my favorite thing ever. I could talk forever about DBT.
Sorry.
No, you're good. That's what like helped me a lot in my recovery from BPD and you know, a myriad of other things. And I think it's a really accessible therapy. Like it's something that like kind of just like makes sense. I made prompts that, you know, were inspired by that, inspired by just, you know, the different types of therapies that are out there. And it got funded. It actually was funded 269% more than I asked.
And did you use good design to make that work well?
I did. I designed the headers in my Kickstarter. Wasn't just like a block of text. I made a GIF that had statistics, you know, and they all reflected the design that was in the book, which is very hand lettered, which is what I do a lot of because I find that it reaches the audience I'm trying to reach, like young adults, teenagers. And yeah, so I don't even know how many I've sold right now. They're in boxes. But yeah, I've only been selling them on my website for now. But I hope to put them on Amazon soon. But yeah.
So one of the things that I had asked during the warm-up was you were sort of talking about some of the difficulties of self-funding. So you did it. I think there is, for the uninitiated, there is this belief that you can totally self-author or self-publish. And, well, of course you self-author, that's dumb. But you can self-publish and it's like so easy and you get rid of the middleman. But there are reasons why people might do that, but it is definitely not. Could you sort of explain about why you might start a Kickstarter and self-publish, but then how you might move something through that, because your statements to us were like, this is really hard. I don't want to stay in that place.
Yeah, I think for me now, well, when I made the Kickstarter, I decided, you know, there's different ways you can go about it. CreateSpace by Amazon has now made it more simple for people to self-publish and get their work out there, which is great. But I wanted more control over, you know, how it was being created, what paper it's on, and things like that. And I didn't really look at CreateSpace that much because I didn't want to do print on demand, which is where it's printed as people order it. I wanted to order like a set amount of books so I could, you know, sell them myself. I could give some to different communities, things like that. And it was awesome getting funded on Kickstarter, because that's the only way I would have been able to do it. That, and it was also my project as an emerging scholar. So I got a grant from Active Minds for that.
Shout out Active Minds! This is an emerging scholar. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, so it was cool that I had, you know, kind of complete control over what I was creating, which was important. But it's harder now that, you know, selling has slowed down. So I moved from Pennsylvania to Chicago, lugging, like I couldn't lug all those books with me because there's no room in the car with just my stuff. So my lovely parents are, have taken over the shipping aspect for me. I just send them the label and they print it and ship it for me. But that's the part that's kind of hard, is, you know, you're not only promoting it and selling it yourself, you know, you have to fulfill the shipping orders, you're going to the post office, and also it's harder to get into bookstores. So I'm in one local store called Atomic Books in Baltimore, which is by my school. But other than that, like, you know, to get into Barnes & Noble, it's like really hard. Usually you need to have an agent or something. So those are kind of some of the roadblocks that, like, it really depends how much time you have to give to the project. And it's hard when you're, you know, I was a senior year student. That was only my one class project, you know, not it wasn't like everything I was doing.
So, I mean, what you're telling me is that the DIY approach, that there is a reason why people have jobs and there's a big industry around design and around publishing and distribution, is that it's really a lot of work. And that when you're doing it as a DIY, there are reasons why you might tactically pick things like that when you're newer to a field, it's earlier in your career, you're really limited on resources, or like you're doing a project to really establish yourself as a professional. But it is not an end goal, and it's not that you'll just put a book up and everyone will just go buy it, right?
Yeah, and I've even learned more about that as right now I work as a freelance designer, and I'm doing the layout and design of a really awesome book about chronic illness by Jenny Grover, who is a chronic babe. Working on that, like, it's made me realize, because my book wasn't as much text. It was, you know, it was like I was writing prompts and stuff. But hers is like a guidebook, and so all the edits back and forth and things like that, you know, like she was saying, she's like, I could have never done this myself. Like, you need to have a designer to lay it out, because it's so much. There's so much that goes into it.
So that's a wonderful transition. But before we do that, like, the tweets have been flying. So shout out to Texas, Stop Texas Suicides, and to Lisa and the crew. I know that they're talking about getting the distress line out to people, and that they'll let us know about what the needs are as we start to have more information. Bart, Chris, do you guys want to check in real quick before we start talking about impact of good design?
Well, I think that looking at the thread, people are really curious about design, and I think it's an important topic. A lot of people are asking about accessibility. I saw accessibility and the importance of accessibility in design, which I'm sure things Alyse will talk about. And I think more and more in the SPSM crowd is a savvy crowd, and I think that it's really telling that our folks are like, we want to know more about design and how do these things intersect with getting our message out, and how do you do that? And so I saw some of those comments on the thread. Chris, what do you see on the thread, or what kind of comments do you have?
Yeah, no, it's great to see the questions that are out here right now, and I actually had looked at that one too, Bart, about accessibility and like what kinds of elements you have to consider. And one of the things that we were talking about on the pre-show that I think kind of relates to this is the idea that with the advent of social media and with the advent of a lot of like free or low-cost creation tools, everybody feels like they can do their own stuff.
In our defense, the software and the products make us feel like Instagram makes me feel like I'm Desiree Stage.
Yeah. And you have apps that make it really easy to put out things that look cool, right? But the question that Alyse had in the pre-show was, but should you? Really, when it comes to things like coordinating this stuff, right? Like there's a lot to it. And so if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a concrete purpose for what you're doing, it can look as nice as it possibly can, but nobody will see it. So that's kind of where I want, like, I think Alyse, obviously you have a lot of experience with that specific aspect, and I'm wondering if you have, it's like to you, and like, how can you make things look good, but also make it so that people see it and can understand the message?
Yeah. All great topics.
Chris sort of vaguely Doc Foreman that question to you. So, but tell us, like, how design, like, what is the impact of good design? Tell us a little bit more, like, why does it make a difference? Can you give some examples?
Yeah, so for me, when I look at good design, to me it means that it's engaging the audience that it's intended for. So if you're creating a children's book, you want the design to fit, children. So it tends to be more whimsical and, more simple and things like that. If you're geared towards older adults, you're going to make design that has an interest in them. And that's also, reasons why when people are talking about, when you look at like an ad, like who are the people in the ad, do you see yourself in the ad? So with design, we're kind of just making something that invites you in to then engage with that piece of design. Because something that a lot of people I feel like forget is that graphic design is it's communication design. So the core of graphic design is communication. And so we're kind of I look at it as we're the middleman where, a nonprofit will have a message that they want to get out into the world. The way they get that out into the world is through the design, because that's how you take in whatever it is they're trying to put out. So that's where I see that, like, it's clear that it affects it, because if the design isn't engaging your viewers or isn't, making an impact on these people, they're not, they don't have a reaction, then you're kind of doing it an injustice to the words that you're trying to get to them.
We talk about how language matters in our field of mental health, and language is just one aspect of communication. And our word choice, verbally and written, is actually only really it's only a piece of the message. And actually, research is really clear that there's a lot of things around the words that we use that really impact people communicate. And I mean, what you're talking about is design that wraps around our words. We've spent so much time in graduate school learning about word choice and about writing and about communicating verbally or written, and not about how we're communicating visually or in others. And we're talking about sort of visually, but it's more than that. And can you sort of like maybe give an example, like explain some of the things that you've done in your Kickstarter and your book that you like thought were really useful, that helped you with your mission?
Yeah, so I think something that I got a lot that I realized in working on this book was the prompts that resonated the most with people. So one that is constantly brought up, which I can tweet out a link to because I have a printable of it. It's a cell phone. It's a drawing of a cell phone, and says like rant away, and it's just like a blank cell phone. And it's kind of, you know, an outlet because, you know, when you are feeling whatever you're feeling and you want to send that text to your ex-boyfriend or, you know, to your mom or to whoever that you're either angry with, upset with, it's kind of like, you know, channeling that into something else that is more productive than what it would be to actually send that message. So that prompt, like, it made me realize that it connected with a lot of people because, you know, we're on our phones all the time. People see that imagery and they relate to it, and they see, you know, rant away on top of a cell phone, and they kind of get the message. And that's what we're aiming for, is that, you know, using even just the basics of design, we want to get that message across as clearly as we can, but still leaving room for the interpretation of the viewer.
That is really nice. Like, that makes me wonder about all the missed opportunities, because we might be focusing on one part of our message, like a word we pick, but might not be focusing on a whole bunch of other missed opportunities, right? But Chris, I'm seeing Chris' face. Tell us more.
No, I absolutely love the idea of leaving at the end of the process that there's still room for the audience to have some leftover evaluation. Like, there's room for them to take what they want away from it. We get so centered in our design creation, and I think a lot of fields, but especially I've noticed it in this field, and trying to communicate what we think is so important. Right?
Yeah.
We know that suicide prevention and mental health are like, they are the most important things.
Yeah.
But so when we create something, we're like, look at this. It's so cool because we're like, what we're doing is so important.
Yeah.
But when you present it that way and the audience is like, yeah, but why? Like, I don't get that, you know?
Yeah. I went through before we started this, I have this book that my sister got me called The Designer Says. And so it's a bunch of like quotes from designers. And I bookmarked ones, and one that I love that really resonates and I think relates to especially like suicide prevention design. Oh my gosh, I cannot say this name. It's French. It's by Sheila Levrant de Bretteville. Something like that.
I support you in that pronunciation.
Thank you.
I should never be the person who does names.
Yeah. But so the quote says, "My work continues to be centered on making a place for who and what is left out, listening to the other person, and being not only receptive to change, but initiating change." And so that is like a quote that I feel like I kind of carry through all my design, and that you know, our job is not just to push out things, it's to also listen and make what you're thinking and what you want out of your campaign or your brochure, or even like the end of the year, you know, whatever those things are called for like an organization where they put, this is where our money went. You know, you have a vision and we want to make it the best that it can be, and get it out to people in a way that they can digest and they can understand and want to learn more.
So, I mean, what you're saying is, like, designer, you need to tell your designer, first of all, you need to have some design work, whether it's contract or whether it's a person who's on your staff, and you need to say, this is the mission, and there is a way that design like helps you live your mission. So, so I'm gonna be totally selfish, and I'm gonna pitch you something, and we're gonna have a little fun.
Okay.
So the mission of SPSM is to provide expert-to-expert suicide prevention content at the speed of innovation, right? Using whatever social media means possible. We're talking about suicide prevention, technology, innovation, science. Okay, at the speed of innovation, using the best, the fastest dissemination things. Like, that's what we're about. Like, from a design standpoint, what are things that a designer thinks of when you say that?
I think, like, what you think of is like, okay, so if you're making a logo or something, people usually start out, you know, sketching things that like you would think of like the keywords. So, you know, fast paced, or, you know, at the, what was it, at the speed of, what did you?
At the speed of innovation.
That's it. Like that. Like you listen for those, like those key phrases and things that are kind of like, you know, that impactful phrase. I feel like, at least in my design, like words are very important in how my process goes. I definitely like kind of sit on what. Oh,
I've been trying to keep the cat down. She just wants to, for whatever reason, this has happened. She's super excited to see it. Go ahead.
But yeah, so I think you kind of have to think, okay, what imagery comes to mind when you're thinking of these words, and what things are most important to get across to the person. What can, you know, designs are often like complex too, of like the first look that someone has, what's the first thing they get, and then if they sit with it for a bit, like what other information are they getting from that design?
So that's like really cool, because, you know, when we did our logo, we ended up doing something that was sort of Hive-like, because we sort of thought about hive mind, and we thought about and this was like very, very early days when we just started, and I cobbled together something just to get us started. But within the year, things had grown and we needed something better. But you're also talking about like listening, like as a designer, things that stick with you as a designer. And like no one had listened to me quite the same way when we've talked about SPSM. And then you're saying, here are the words that, as a designer. And this might be a process that would be really good to do with a designer, right? Chris, are you having reactions to that as we're sort of talking about, and I'm only using us because I know we have permission to. So go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, no, I love the idea of you know, focusing on these keywords. I mean, that totally makes sense, and trying to communicate that visually is, you were talking about being the middleman. You take what the idea is, and then you translate it into something that opens it up for that person to experience it. And that's not an easy thing to do by any means. And so April, I mean, I love the logo. So good work.
That's Tony. Like, Tony totally shepherded that through. And I remember they were like, when we were trying to figure out a color, and I was like, wow. And then there was a periwinkle choice, and I'm not really clear about that, but we were happy. I will say that we did do that. And we also then repurposed the design, and we, you know, have a little merch, and like I have some fun flip-flops that I wear, and everybody likes the messenger bag. And this year we're going to be doing some episodes with the Slanket, the SPSM Slanket, which I just think is awesome. But tell us a little bit more about what a brand book is. So like, getting the color of the logo isn't the big deal that people think it is, right? But it turns out that a brand book, or some rules about how brands are used, it turns out to be really important. So talk a little bit more about that. Yeah,
so a brand book is basically the guide for anything that is coming out of the company, or the nonprofit, or, you know, really anything. It tells you, you know, how to use the logo. So once the logo is made, you know, it'll say, you know, if sometimes they have a specific place they want the logo in, if they always want it at the top left or something. Usually they're not that specific, but you never know. So it's basically the instruction manual on how to create visual things for the company. So if you're, you know, making a one-pager or of information, what font are you supposed to use for things like that? What color should you use? Usually they'll be like, you know, say they have 4 colors, you know, there's like the main color, the accent, and like 2 accent colors, and then like black, or so, you know, something like that. You can, like, they'll say, you know, you can use this color for headings, or you can pick any of those 4 colors for headings, and it'll give you, you know, the exact, you know, RGB numbers for it and things like that.
Whoa. RGB numbers.
Like red, green, blue. So on a computer, RGB is the way the color is.
I mean, I can't just use a Pantone color chip wheel.
I mean, some now there's all these there's all these graphic design tools online and stuff that but you can just pick a color, or you can, if you like click on it, you can use a hex code, which is also another way you type it in and it goes straight to the color. So yeah, it will give you like all those things. So you are using you're not just like, oh, use blue. You're like, use this specific blue. Like it's
use this blue on this thing and this blue on that, and put it on this part of the page.
Exactly.
When you do a tweet, it looks like this, and when you do a Facebook post, it looks like this. When you send out, when you print out a T-shirt, we're having a walk and we do a T-shirt. This is what we do, right?
Yeah. Some even have, like what type of stock photos do you like using? So like one nonprofit I was at, it talked about
you go to steal shit off the internet.
No, not good.
Bart gave baby Bart face.
You mean you can't just like scribble out the watermark and then
they make watermark removers.
What?
Yeah.
Oh God, that breaks my heart.
I would never. I've heard this from somebody.
Mostly because if you think about it, if especially like that happens to designers, is like people just take. Actually, once happened to me that my one of the posts I made for Active Minds. Somehow along translation on social media, the credit to Active Minds got taken off and was posted by like a big page, and then everyone was like, oh wait, like this was created by Alyse and this was for Active Minds and blah blah blah. And luckily the page had no idea, and they were just like, oh my God, like yeah, here's the credit, like. But that's what happens is things get put up, and it's kind of like a lose-lose. Like I'm not gonna not post my designs or like social media things because I'm afraid someone's gonna take it. It's kind of comes with it. But that's where like you want people to value the work you're doing and understand that that technically like taking someone's design is plagiarism because our work's protected too. It's not, you learn about that in school with like papers, like don't copy and paste, but like, right clicking and saving is apparently fine. So
I totally feel like that should be its own little meme right there. You learn not to copy and paste, but right click and save is fine. We've done our fair share of this. We're so totally not even like, I know what fair use is and we're good about it. And thank you for teaching me about Creative Commons, Tony Wood, so that I'm not a horrible monster anymore.
Creative Commons is great though, because that's the thing about accessibility too, is like I've had stuff where I'm like, like I'm gonna do this as Creative Commons where people can remix it or post it where they want and things like that. So Creative Commons has been a really cool thing for people to be able to share those designs.
So would you tell folks what Creative Commons is, and could you walk through like if you were showing up and like there was some organization that had like I know that most nonprofits, especially mental health, like we totally have our design act together. We're just so hip and cool. But if let's say you were showing up to someone who is not so hip and cool, what would be like in your first year, what would be your top 5 important design tasks that you're like, here are the fundamental things that we would do to start getting our act together?
So I think like definitely having a good logo is super important because that goes on everything. It has to be able to fit so many different types of applications. It needs to, be able to be read very tiny, very big. There's just a lot of things that go into a logo that I feel like people just kind of are like, oh yeah, like here's the logo and whatever. But it really can make or break, a nonprofit. And then on top of that, I think, the promotional materials of like, if someone comes up to you and is like, what do you do? And like the thing that you hand them that tells you what you do, like that needs to look good, because that's often a first impression of your company or your organization. And then on top of that, now that social media, I really think that social media posts like need to be good. Like if you're posting a social media post with like a graphic, and the graphic's like pixelated, or, you know, is just like haphazardly put together, you know, someone's going to look at that and have, whether they know it or not, like a negative reaction. They're going to be like, think, oh, like maybe they're not that professional, or, you know, they're not going to share it because it doesn't look pretty. So I think like we kind of think that social media, you know, the internet's just so quick and fast paced that it doesn't really matter like what we're putting up. But in reality, like, because it's the internet, it's around for a while. Like I'll see posts that I made like 3 years ago that like will pop up, you know, later because someone shared it. And those things you want, like they do reflect your organization and what is behind it. So I think, yeah, social media posts are important. And then just having everyone on the same page, like we said with the brand book, like having something where like your staff, whoever is making things that are going out, whether it's print media, whether it's web, whether it's social media, you know, whatever is the output, making sure that everyone's on the same page of, you know, a general idea of what it should look like. Of course, not everything should look exactly the same, but it should have a common thread throughout it, so that you look at it and you're kind of like, oh, this is probably, you know, by that company, because it, you know, it has that same vibe behind it, or that feeling.
Yeah, like you're talking about a vibe and a feeling. I remember that when I first started doing stuff, Tony Wood, who now everybody knows, but we started really collaborating and working together back in 2008. So we're on year 10. And one of the first things he's like, you have to have a decent business card. And I was like, who even really cares? And he's like, there's a minute where, you know, the information is exchanged, but it's also about the experience people have when you give it to them.
That is, yes.
Right. Well, I didn't know that. And he's like, you're a shrink. How do you not know about interactive experiences and emotional experiences?
I used to have, like, and even like design changes so quick. Like I made business cards my freshman year of college, when I was, you know, just starting in design. I was like, oh, these are so cute. Like, I love them. And then I was going to something that I needed business cards, like, and I looked at them and I was like, I don't want to give these to people. Like, oh my gosh, like these are hideous. And then I finally like redesigned them, and I now have gold foil.
Ooh.
Oh, and look, it's your brand. So it's
my brand. So that's where I've started to learn like everything connects. Like I use a lot of gold. Like I love tacky gold stuff. I have a gold hooray hanging in my room. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do gold foil, and I'm going to do hand lettering, because a lot of my stuff is hand lettered. And so you want everything you're putting out to reflect you or reflect the company, because like it doesn't really make sense if it doesn't, you know, like it should reflect what you're about.
So I gotta say, like, did you see our faces? I don't know if everybody saw like the nonverbals, and I was watching down the screen, and I want to check in with Bart and Chris, but like you pulled out your business card and you flipped them, and our brains got it so fast. Chris, look at Chris is like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it looked like one of my favorite typefaces that I use all the time. So I was like, yes.
Oh, those are they specific typefaces, or are those things that, at least, I don't know.
This is my handwriting.
The hand-drawn. Yeah.
That's my handwriting.
Oh,
this is
wow.
That's a typeface.
Those are beautiful.
Thank you.
Julie is showing a statue of butter that captures Justin Trudeau holding pee. I can't, Julie. Cyril, stop. Julie made it her personal mission to distract me between her and the damn cat. Okay, so Chris, Bart, you had a really interesting couple of tweets. Could you review some of the contents from your last couple of tweets? I haven't even been able to keep up with all of them. There's about 3 in a row.
I know, I'm like trying to go through it.
Yeah, they're about 3 in a row. Bart, can you comment, please?
So on my tweets?
Yeah, you've said several good things on Twitter.
So well, I'm known for that. That's kind of my brand. So there's several things. One, I thought it was really interesting when we talk about the design and how it makes people feel, right? And so there's a quote that's actually misattributed to Maya Angelou, but it actually goes back to a guy named Buhner back in the 70s, and says people may not remember what you said or did, but they will remember how you made them feel, right? Mm-hmm. And when I think, as I listen to you, Alyse, talking about design, a lot of the elements of design are about the emotional experience, how we feel when the message comes across. The words are a part of that. There's no doubt about that. But the design, the color, the layout, just like when I looked at your handwritten cards, for instance, the feeling that I get from seeing that, right, the gold and the handwriting it's incredibly rich, right? And it's really hard to label that experience, other than there's something much more in depth to that experience than if it was just typed out. Right. Mm-hmm. And so as we're thinking about design, and when I tweeted out from the SPSM account about the hive design, I've always been really attracted to the SPSM design. It's extremely well done, but I never spent a lot of time thinking about why that is. But now when I think about it, there's a feeling that's associated with all these people kind of connected and the interconnection of the network, right? So there's this feeling of family and connection in that design. And really until we've been talking about design with you, Alyse, did it really hit the feelings that were connected with this beautiful design. So I think that the things that you are really striking on is that design and all these little choices that we take for granted have a lot to do with the feeling we have around the messages that we're getting, either we want to promote or we're getting exposed to. So those are some of the things that are popping for me right now.
And I'm hoping that someone is memeing. I'm known for saying good things on Twitter because Start just tweeted that out, and that's caused me to almost snort. Alyse, go ahead, follow up with Bart.
Yeah, that's definitely what I think is at the heart of design, and at the heart of especially my design, is getting across a certain feeling that you want people to have, which is kind of, if you think of in terms of advertising or something, like when they make a commercial, they're trying to get you to feel sappy about the relationship, or or feel like excited to get that new product. When we're doing design, that's what we're doing. And for a nonprofit, I'm trying to get you excited about suicide prevention, or get you to feel something about, okay, yes, this is an issue that I want to help with. We're trying to get people to engage with what we think is really important and what is really important. And design can be a way to do that, but it can also be a way to turn people away. If it's not an engaging design, if it's not speaking to the right audience, you could lose that person who could really make a difference, because you kind of miss the mark. But yeah, I think that's a really great quote that does definitely relate to design, in that, and something you said that also made me think of that, design, you want to notice the good design, but like you were saying, that you never even realized that that connection, but that's like what design is supposed to do. Like, it's not supposed to hit you in the face. Like, you're not supposed to actively look at it, and be like, oh, that's a really good design. Like, I think that because I've studied design, but the average person that we're speaking to, design shouldn't get in the way of the message. It just should be presenting the message in a way that gets people to pay attention.
And we were talking about in the warm-up that and these people do not care about me, so I'm not throwing shade, Walmart. But the difference of going shopping at Walmart versus going shopping at Target, they're going for a very, very different shopping experience, and you have a very different reaction. Mm-hmm. And so I shop both places every week, and I for sometimes very similar kinds of items. And I have one reaction about my status and about the status of the place I'm going, and about the pleasure and excitement and of the visit in one place, and a different reaction in the other. And that is about the design, a whole bunch about the design of the store. And when we're thinking about suicide prevention, if our mission is really life-saving information, life-saving policy, life-saving research, life-saving organizations and behaviors, That's a very important mission, and it's worthy of good design. One of the questions for you was, like, what should someone, if someone wanted to get started, what are some resources someone should start reading or learning?
Yeah, so a really good resource is the AIGA, which is, what does it stand for? No one ever calls it by their name, but it's the association, the Professional Association for Design, and so they have really great resources. They also have a lot of resources about design for good, which is what it's kind of called when a designer is doing things that are nonprofit based or social justice based or something that's like for a good cause. But for doing your own design, I actually like some graphic designers kind of like shit on the on the graphic design online tools. Yeah, but I think like there's some that are if people are gonna do it themselves, then we want at least to help them. So I've actually used Canva.
So have I.
Yeah, and I actually like it. I mean, the funny thing is, like I forget who told me this, but at one of my internships, they're like, there's still a difference. Like, yeah, Canva will up your game from, if you were just gonna create it yourself, but there's still a difference between a designer using Canva and just like an average person using Canva. So like, yes, it'll be a little better than what yours would have been, but if a designer's using it or if a designer's creating it, it's still gonna be better. So it's not equivalent. And I think that's important to recognize, is that, yeah, all these tools are great and they can help, but they're not a replacement for designers. So I would encourage people to look for local designers, local freelance designers. Look for, they don't even have to be local. Just look for designers that have work that makes you feel something, or you're drawn to, that maybe they have a certain style that you like or that you think would reflect your organization well, and just like looking to understand the value of design. There's so many great. You can follow AIGA Design on Twitter. They have some great stuff. Even like Adobe, their products are used very, very widely for design. So they often have great stuff. And even just different like competitions that so you can look at these emerging designers. And yeah, I think it's just, learning about the trade and then recognizing the value in it, so that the next time there's a project that needs to be, disseminated to people, like be like, oh, actually, like maybe we should get a designer for this project, because it'll make that much more of an impact.
When you're having, and Chris is nodding, but when you're having a licensed clinician who's $100+ an hour, it would be that money, you should be making clinical decisions that you were trained to do, and that money would be better spent on your design budget. Chris, go ahead.
Exactly.
Your head went like this, Chris.
Two things. I'm like over here head banging. Two things really quick. I love Canva. I also love their blog. They have a design blog that they'll throw out some ideas for templates. I have a typeface pairing blog post that they did like 2 years ago, and I have it bookmarked and I use it all the time. Awesome. And yeah, so I love Canva. I'm going to ask a question really quickly, and because we're talking about the value of design and of this work, and making sure that we're effectively communicating these messages. And as we know, a lot of our organizations in this field are smaller nonprofits. Their budgets aren't huge. And so a lot of times when it comes to looking at doing these types of things, it's, it could be a matter of we get to pay for our phone lines, or we can, hire somebody to on our branding. What do you say to an organization that might be struggling with that, might be going through that, to kind of really reiterate the fact that marketing is and design, and that's a really important aspect of their business? I
think like in the business sense, like an important fact would be, you know, that you'll probably make more money if you have the good design to begin with, because you're going to be reaching people, engaging them, and they're going to, you know, it can help people believe in your mission and want to give money to you to go do that mission because they believe that you can do it well because you have well-designed things. And the consumer isn't making that connection, like looking at it being like, this is good design, so that means you're a good company. But that's the, you know, that's why people are brand loyal, you know, like there's brands, you know, you see the generic on the shelf and you see the brand that you're used to, that design, that's design playing a part, and that you pick that one up because you understand it, it's something familiar to you. Design is in so many different things that it really does make a difference in how people are interacting with you. So in a business standpoint, yeah, like you'll probably make more money because that is something that's useful for investing into your company. But for nonprofits, also, like a lot of designers do have a nonprofit price. So especially if you get a designer who like believes in what you're doing, they do have, like, you know, they'll have a nonprofit rate or something like that to, you know, kind of help a little bit because they understand that you're not this multi-million-dollar company, but, you know, also that, you know, they need to make a living. So I think it's finding, you know, that balance and like I said, the value of design, like understanding that it's a valuable asset and it's a valuable investment. You can then make your annual budget accordingly, you know, like there's things that you can move around, or, you know, kind of like there's ways to figure out how you can incorporate that good design. So
as a matter of fact, and I don't know, this is a question I'm just asking, but like if a designer gives you a nonprofit rate or donates some work because your agency is important, can they get at least, like, can you as a nonprofit agency give them documentation for their taxes that can assist them in some way? Like, are there ways that can be worked out?
I don't know if there's a difference for like for a discounted rate, but for pro bono work, I'm sure there probably is, because it's kind of like a donation, I guess.
It's a time
yeah, it's a time donation. So yeah, there's definitely things. And for freelance designers, like Freelance Union is a really good database that has helped me immensely, because doing design, like I plan to do, you know, I'm studying art therapy and I'm going to be an art therapist, but I plan to continue doing design as a freelancer, you know, for a while. Like I do it now because I love doing it, and I often work with nonprofits because I love the message behind the work, and, you know, it's something that I believe in. So I think, yeah, like finding people who are excited about the project is also important, because they're, you know, they're more willing to work with you and more excited to do it, you know.
I can't believe this. I just looked up and it's 2 minutes until close. This is terrible. So we're at final thoughts. Bart Andrews, I'm going to give you first crack at it because I know you like it when I make you go first.
Alyse, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for all that you do. The blogs, the insights that you're sharing. Folks had so many questions, and I think this is a topic we're going to need to revisit, because folks want to do this. They want to know how to do it, and we've just kind of gotten whetted their appetite a little bit, because there's a lot to this, and you've developed a lot of skills over the year. So thank you for all you're doing, and thank you for sharing your wisdom tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And Chris Maxwell.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alyse. You are incredible. This has been an amazing show. So I'm just so excited that we got to chat with you. But yeah, thank you so much.
The funnest parts are the pre and post show, folks. It's so sad you don't get to be there for that. But Alyse, final thoughts.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. This is super fun. I love when I can get a topic that, like, other people are excited about, and I'm just like, I want to talk about this forever. And it's something that I think a lot of designers are more interested in, is like making a change and doing doing things that are for, you know, the social good. So it's a topic that really needs to be talked about more often. So yeah, I appreciate getting the time to talk about this with you, and I'm free to talk and design for anyone who wants to do that. So yeah, thank you.
And this is at Doc Foreman. Final thought: we are thinking of you in Houston, and Alyse, we really appreciate you giving up 7 or 8 minutes of our time together in that service. If you guys want to follow Alyse on Twitter, it's Alyse backwards RUR, and so I kept having difficulty typing it backwards because I knew it was your name, but it's ESYLA or YLERUR on Twitter. A?
Yeah.
Damn it! So close.
Yeah.
With me. But you guys can keep in touch with her on Twitter. She really does a great job. And Alyse, tell them where your book is, so if they want to go check out your project and they want to order one.
Yeah. So my book is on my website. It's just www.alyseruriani.com.
Oh, fantastic. And folks, she's going to tweet out the link to that. So if you're interested in her workbook, oh, there it is, a creative workbook journal thing, which I'm totally into. And Alyse will send you one if you order it. We are so grateful to have you. Everybody, we're so glad to have already started season 5. We've got more stuff coming, running the gamut this year like we do always. But before I go, Dr. Julie Serrell, president of the American Association of Suicidology, wants to let you know that very soon AAS will be taking proposals for our conference, for conference presentations. Do please, if you know other AAS people and you're interested in putting a proposal together, now's the time. Everybody's talking about it. It's sort of like 16-year-old girls in December thinking about a dress for prom. It's already happening. Everybody have a great week. If you care about folks in Houston, you can always donate to the Red Cross, and for specific members of the SPSM community, we'll be supporting the members who support us all the time. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Bye.